we in the School of International Studies at JNU are celebrating our 70th anniversary, and I am therefore particularly thrilled to be here because this is my first visit to Taiwan. Although I have been in Taipei and now in Taichung for just 3 days, I am deeply inspired and even overwhelmed by the beauty of this land, the gentleness and graciousness of our hosts, the genius of its innovators, the ubiquitous commitment to our fundamental shared values, and frankly the indomitable spirit of its people and the formidable courage that I witness almost everywhere. One of our first encounters, Professor Acharya was with me in Taiwan, and the formidable talent of its people was through the liaison officer from the Foreign Office who met us in Taipei and accompanied us to many of our meetings in the capital over the last 2 days. Alfred grew up in New York as an American citizen of Taiwanese origin, studied in Columbia University and then at Johns Hopkins, and acquired a JD from Wisconsin-Madison, summa cum laude, and could have found a top place in any law firm in New York City, but chose to give up his American citizenship, returned to Taiwan, did his obligatory military service, and then joined the country's prestigious diplomatic corps, the Foreign Service. For me, Alfred Chai is a symbol of the new Taiwan and the future of Taiwan. Cosmopolitan in culture, in the best global and traditional values, committed to Taiwan with passion and compassion and caring about its future, and with exceptional talent and a capacity to excel in almost every field of human endeavor, and with a distinct niche in today's globalized world. That is Alfred Chai today, and that is Taiwan today and tomorrow. Let's face it and not shy away from it in this bilateral workshop, because we often are guarded in our words of both praise, sometimes even in terms of our criticism. But let's not shy away from it, that Taiwan's journey towards democracy and its vibrant democratic ethos today is a beacon of hope in a region steeped in turbulence. Taiwan emerged from a complex past, admittedly, but it has firmly established itself as a model of respect for freedom and diversity. Indeed, it's the resilience of its people in their unwavering commitment to democratic principles, and I'm told that it's ranked by many of those who conduct these surveys of democratic resilience as amongst the top democracies in the region. It is this democratic commitment to democratic principles which I believe, like in India, has allowed Taiwan to thrive as a hub of innovation and progress. Of course, the world-renowned semiconductor manufacturing industry is a prime example of Taiwan's ingenuity, and you are going to talk about it for the rest of the day. An industry that has not only propelled Taiwan onto the global stage, but also positioned it as a critical player in the supply chains that underpin the modern global economy. But this is just one example. There are scores of other examples, and I know many of you will be discussing it through whether it's cybersecurity or other areas of digital governance in many of the sessions that are being held later in the morning and in the afternoon. That this is happening, that this commitment to democracy, that this innovation is happening, despite the anaconda strategy, as someone described it, of its northern neighbor, seeking Taiwan's collapse through grey zone activities like blockades, cyber attacks, persistent bullying, attempts at economic strangulation, measures just short of war, is a great tribute to the continuing resilience of the people of Taiwan. In my address, let me begin, unusually for such an address, by first telling you the conclusions that I have arrived at. The rest of my address, given the paucity of time, will only try and flesh out some of these conclusions. My first conclusion and broad brush assertion is that there are few countries in the Indo-Pacific region which have such a great deal of congruence of both values and interests as do India and Taiwan. And I'm delighted that under the dynamic leadership of Professor Dhananjay Singh, there is this annual workshop, but I hope there are other follow-up workshops and activities as well. So the broad brush assertion is that there are few countries in the Indo-Pacific which have such a great deal of congruence of both values and interests. Values and ideas in international relations matter in the long term. Even realists who believe that only short-term instrumentalities of power matter will begin to recognize that in the long term, shared values are the best strategy for partnerships. I firmly, as someone drawn to the liberal stream of international relations, believe that you need a fundamental unity of values for the relationship to sustain itself. But even as far as interests, which are often seen as drivers for a relationship in the short term or the medium term, there is a convergence of interests as well. Now, this was intuitively clear to me even before this visit, but this visit has reinforced this analytically as well. So this is the first conclusion. Second conclusion, and that will depend a lot on people sitting in this room. This relationship will grow and grow speedily in the years to come at every level, in terms of academic collaboration, in terms of cultural exchanges, in terms of economics and trade, but also politically and strategically. While it may continue to be, and sometimes deliberately so, understated, and the radars may not announce or flash the cementing of this partnership, it will grow exponentially in the months and years to come. In other words, the relationship is ready for a takeoff, even if it's like an F-35 stealth fighter, which is always avoids the radars, but carries on with its flight and its capability. Consider this. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi was sworn in as India's Prime Minister for a third consecutive time in June 2024, President Lai congratulated him on Twitter, on X. My sincere congratulations to Prime Minister on his election victory. We look forward to enhancing the fast-growing India-Taiwan partnership, expanding our collaboration on trade, technology and other sectors to contribute to peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. Normally, and based on past precedent, there would have been no response from the Indian side. But in this case, the Honorable Prime Minister of India responded by an equally warm message. Thank you, Mr. President. I look forward to close ties as we work towards mutually beneficial economic and technological partnership. Such a response would have been inconceivable even a couple of years ago. First brush, values and interests converge. Second, exponentially the relationship will grow. Third, the speed and scale of the exponential growth of the relationship will be determined as much by the collaborations in the ground, such as this one, but also in the manner in which three disruptions impact on the bilateral relationship. I call them disruptions. Some other people may have a more benign term for them. The first disruption is the disruption in the international system by China and President Xi Jinping's attempts at establishing a hegemony within this region. While Taiwan faces an existential crisis, India faces a neighbor which is trying to cut India to size to the geography of South Asia and box its aspirations and ambitions. This is the first overarching disruption. The second disruption is a disruption only in terms of past precedent because we don't really know the future. The disruption caused by the election of President Trump. If Nancy Pelosi's visit in August 2022 to Taiwan represented one landmark visit where she said categorically that she's there to strengthen and commit America to Taiwan and its democracy and its resilience, we are uncertain about what Trump's inauguration will represent. What he has said in the campaign is quite one thing. What he did as Trump during his first tenure is quite another. But how will Trump act in the future? Will he be the transactional salesman that everyone predicts him to be, or will there be a commitment which will be abiding as a relationship, bilateral relationship, whether it's between India and the United States or between the United States and Taiwan. But it is a disruptive moment in international relations. The third disruption will be the disruption which is the subject matter of your dialogue today, which is the disruption caused by artificial intelligence. It's a phenomenal disruption which is happening. It's disruption because it's both systemic as well as decentered from the individual to the supranational level. It's a disruption which is going to impact all our lives. From the tutorials that are submitted to by my students in my class to larger international systemic financial transactions, AI is going to disrupt or change the way we act, we think, and the manner in which we are able to even comprehend what's happening. At this moment, therefore, it's critical for academics, thinkers, and this is the final conclusion of my paper, that it's critical for academics, thinkers, and the wider knowledge-based community described in international relations as the epistemic community to reimagine our relationship. This requires a sustained dialogue at multiple levels, but also greater capacity building. I would request Professor Dhananjay Singh and the ICCR to invest more in Taiwan studies and much more, and I request similar institutions in Taiwan to invest in understanding India. This must become a major priority for institutions in both countries. I can flesh out many of the ideas that I have just telegraphically bullet pointed here, but I'll first ask Naina, how much time do I have?
So you have another 10 minutes.
Okay. The first point, the first area which I did want to sketch on is the manner in which you need to understand the transformation that is occurring within India and within India's foreign policy. It's often easy to brush aside changes in style as merely piecemeal changes in an otherwise continuous trajectory of India's foreign policy. I believe that Modi's foreign policy represents a significant shift towards a more assertive and proactive approach deeply rooted in India's civilizational strengths and what are described as Bharatiya values. There are only two civilizational states which are now articulating their foreign policy deeply rooted in a cultural idiom. One, I think, is possibly China, but certainly in India, principles like Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, Atmanirbhar Bharat, and the importance of cultural diplomacy has become central features of India's foreign policy. However, even here, it is the China challenge which confronts you as you try and take a much more benign, normative view of international relations. But let me tell you some of the indicators of some of the principal features of Modi's foreign policy. One is this whole idea of proactive diplomacy and global engagement rooted in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which is one world, one family, the whole world is one family. This was also the slogan of the G20 during India's presidency. Now, at the heart of Modi's normative worldview is this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This principle emphasizes India's commitment to peace, cooperation, and stability and solidarity. And it has done so by engaging almost on an unprecedented fashion, not since the decolonization experiment, not since decolonization happened, and in the first years of India's independence, has India seen such a multi-level engagement with much of what is described as the global south. In almost every country in the globe, there is not only an Indian presence, but an Indian engagement at the highest level. Secondly, is an attempt at having a neighborhood-first policy as a reflection of what is described as Bharatiya or Indian civilizational values. Now, in this, Modi has succeeded less than in terms of the idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, primarily because of the challenge of Pakistan and even the smaller neighbors, but also because China seeks to undermine India's role, its influence and its place, even in the region of its neighborhood. The third is the whole idea of building partnerships and alliances guided by what are described as dharmic principles. Dharma is the pursuit of justice and righteousness through right actions. And the deepening of ties with the United States, Japan and Australia through frameworks like Quad reflects a commitment to upholding democratic values while ensuring regional stability. And I believe that if you had to have a Quad translate into a pentagon, it would include, whether you state it or not, Taiwan as one of the countries. Finally, there is an emphasis on Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is a self-sufficient Bharat through economic and trade policies. In all these features, you can see that Taiwan and India are natural allies in the manner in which India is articulating civilizational features of its foreign policy. But we must also recognize that there are formidable challenges ahead, not just from China, but from other sources of instability. And I can probably expand them during the discussion period, but for both India and Taiwan, there are common challenges and common opportunities. I know that there is a huge discussion going to happen on the India stack and the manner in which India's financial inclusion presents also a huge opportunity for much of the global south. The Jan Dhan Yojana, Aadhaar and mobile telephony, the JAM trilogy of India's stack has captured the imagination of the world. But there's many lessons that India can take from Taiwan and especially Taiwan's technological finesse. only day before yesterday we were speaking to someone who was looking at Modi's vision of a supply chain in terms of semiconductors. That he does not just want India to be downstream, but upstream, midstream and downstream control the whole supply chain as the mainland was once controlling. This is the vision that India and Taiwan can fulfill through collaboration. And collaboration not just at the level of digital governance and in terms of especially semiconductor collaboration, but also in terms of holding perhaps under the radar dialogues on issues which seem contentious or issues which seem perhaps not right given the current diplomatic issues at stake. But if academics lead the way, I am sure governments will follow. Thank you very much.